When I hear a client that says, I do telesales, the first thing I say is, you're engaging in the most scrutinized part of any marketing.
I'm talking about, Greg, I'm even talking about companies that they're fully aware of the FTC, they're bigger operations, and they don't have a document retention policy, and not having one, just so you guys know, means I ended up having to turn over 700,000 documents. I made the job of the regulators actually much easier and wholesome and more complete, but the worst part of it is that entire time that I was retaining and keeping all those documents, I opened myself up to massive privacy problems.
And if your name's attached to an agency that's representing Jane Doe, Jane D, Jane whatever, and they're out there and they're saying whatever they want, and you know they're not compliant, then you're just gambling. You're playing, Russian roulette.
Today we're going to talk about the 10 different ways, that's right, 10 different ways your advertising can get you sued. We've been talking a lot about the FTC on this podcast, and I think it's time we talked about some of the other players as well. And here's why. Now, I can already see you going, oh my God, there's more, like dang it on it. No, this is actually good news. I come bearing good news because I think that some of the things that Greg and I talk about in this podcast, people feel like are really big things to change. And I kind of understand and agree with you, and I kind of don't. But that's for another day. There are some things that are tougher to change, maybe because you have habits that you've been doing them for a while, or you have fears of what they will do to your conversion. And I got you. I get it. Here's what I've been explaining to everybody, and this is what I want you to take away. This is your risk. Let's just imagine that this is a bar, and this is your risk when you are in business. Like the minute you go in business, you bring regulatory risk, okay? Even if you've sold one newspaper, you are now officially open to regulators. So you have a risk. Let's just say it's at 100%. What I want to share with you today is that you'll never get to 0%. There's no such thing as a business that doesn't have risk from regulators. It just isn't. But of course it makes sense, right? You want to get that as low as humanly possible. The lower your regulator risk, the less likely you are to get sued by regulators. And so what we want to do is change the culture of marketing and marketers and how they look at risk. It's not a all or nothing type of thing. So when we say, hey, this is the rules for testimonials, this is the rules for substantiation, this is the rule for value creation or for valuing bonuses and bonus stacking, everyone's like, oh my God, if I don't do all of it, I'm screwed. And I'm not here to condone that you don't do all of it. You should, but I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of different risk levels, and we should just work on getting rid of one at a time. And I want you to change the way you think. So today, we're going to go over 10. We're going to have a little fun with it. I'm going to time Greg. We're going to give each one 3 minutes max. Some of these are 3 minutes might be more than enough, and some might not be enough. But the goal here is to give you a bit of to give you a lot of hope at the end, because at the end of this, what you're going to see is at least half of that, 50% of the 100% you have right now, you could quickly resolve. Like we could work together and boom, boom, boom. It wouldn't involve you changing your marketing, your ads, your scripts, which you should, but I'm saying there's things you can do. You don't even know you're out of compliance. Like most of you, I would bet, and I don't want to throw a number behind it because I can't substantiate it. So for example, right now, I'm willing to bet that a large majority of our listeners, wouldn't you agree, Greg, are open to a class action lawsuit from California?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the changes in the California Consumer Protection Act in the last year, most people have not updated their privacy statements to include those updates. Yeah.
And did you catch that? It's just an editing of an existing statement you already have, and there goes that 100 goes down a little. So that's the goal of today's time together. So Greg, are you in for our little game show that we're doing today?
Ready.
Our compliance game show.
Beeper.
All right. Just so guys, in case you can tell, Greg's at a much funner place than I am. It's rainy, murky, cold, and disgusting outside right now, and he's out for spring break, hanging out with his family. So good for you, Greg. And he's doing this podcast still, so we're all very grateful for that. Thank you, Greg, for doing that. All right, Greg, we are going to start. I'm going to put the timer on here. We are officially going to, hold on one second here. We're going to officially start risk number 1. This is our good old friend, the FTC. We've been talking about them a lot, but in 3 minutes or less, let's just cover maybe the 3 most important things that the FTC is going for. And Greg, I will give you a 1-minute warning when your 1 minute is coming up. We go start in 3, 2, 1.
False earnings claims, statements that people should expect to make a certain amount of money within a certain period of time, 6 figures in 60 days. That would be one. Number two would be unsubstantiated claims and earnings claims. The statement that, hey, look at Bill. Bill made $10,000 in 2 months after ending our program. And then you don't have any documentation to show that Bill made $10,000 in 2 months after using your program. Third, false qualifications, stating, hey, we only have a few limited seats available for those that qualify in order to join our program. Creates urgency, but it's deceptive and misleading. And so the FTC cracks down on those. So if I was going to focus on marketing practices, number one, false earnings claims. Number two, unsubstantiated earnings claims. And number three, false scarcity or urgency claims.
Holy crap, did that in 50 seconds. Gives me a great opportunity to pitch everybody one really cool thing that we're doing. So if you want to reduce your 10 risks, not just the FTC, but all the other ones we're going to talk about, book a free call right now, a free consult call with us. It's no pressure. Right below, just go to naoac.com/audit, AUDIT. naoac.com/audit and book a free call. We'll have a look at your business and determine which parts we still think are under risk and how to get them fixed, and we'll help you fix them as well. All right, so I've got a minute. I just want to add something here. Guys, one of the areas that I'm out talking to people, now Greg's been doing this for 20 years, but I just started a year ago talking to marketers and explaining this whole FTC risk. Let me give you an area I want you to study, whether it be through our book, which launches, by the way, on April 16th, probably right around the time this podcast is releasing, whether it be through the book or whatever the hell you want to do. Implied earnings claims. Really focus in on that, okay? A lot of people understand that saying, you know, how to make $30,000 in 30 days is wrong. What you don't understand is how implied earnings claims are looked at by the FTC and how they're wrong. So your testimonial stacking, implied earnings claims. For me, all right, our sales team was on the phone saying, what is your goal? And then answering back and saying, we can help you with that implied earnings claim. It's called goal setting, but it's an implied earnings claim. So I'm actually seeing a lot of people messing this area up, and they have no idea. All right, so we're going to move on. Greg, that was awesome, man. We made great time between the both of us, 2.5 minutes. So, all right, the next one, ding, 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 number 2, the FCC. Go, Greg.
So most people don't understand the Federal Communications Commission actually deals with telemarketing, talks about texting and how we contact consumers. And so in December of 2023, the FCC amended the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, or also called the TCPA. In doing so, it changed the requirements when obtaining authorization to contact consumers via text or phone. What they did is they changed this old rule where you could say, hey, by providing this information, you agree to allow the company and my affiliates to contact you, and we can do blah, 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 and you agree to our terms and conditions and privacy policies. Well, in December, they changed it to now you have to say, you've authorized company and our partner XYZ Corporation. So you have to specifically state the company that you're going to provide that data to contact them. So they were opting in for not just you, but any third party that you're going to give that data to contact. So this is 2 reasons you should be concerned about this. Number one, if you're giving your data to a third party to call or text and you don't have proper opt-ins, you're in violation of the new TCPA rules. Number two, if you're buying data from somebody as a lead gen that you're going to then contact them, if they haven't had the proper opt-ins, you're going to be contacting them without authorization. So you've got to be aware of the FCC as well as the FTC.
Which is crazy because I did not even know what the heck the FCC was until they start talking to me, my lawyers, and Greg being one of them, started talking to me about TCPA, telesales. And I was like, man, these telesales are really just, they come with heat. They bring a lot of heat with them. And there's a whole nother organization. Since I have a little bit of time, because you did that in 1.5 minutes, Greg. What is going on? Spring break, Greg is like short to the point. I like it.
Business,
Greg,
all business.
Fun side story. One of our new members in a mastermind that I'm a part of. It's a local mastermind, nothing to do with online marketers. She just joined, and one of her closest friends, she would say one of her top 3 best friends, is the ex-commissioner of the FCC. So I thought that was interesting. She's commercial now. She's fully private, but she said she would introduce me soon. So I thought that was kind of a cool person to get an inside scoop from as to how the regulators think. But guys, if you've never heard of the FCC and you're out there texting people, right? Texting is big now. Everyone's SMSing and texting. You're falling under guidelines. You could get into some pretty serious trouble for texting outside of certain guidelines. So again, a easier, simpler check we can do. Boom, boom, boom. Make some updates. Give you some new rules to follow in your team, and you could reduce that risk. Book your call, guys, below. I mean it, all right? Okay, now, moving on to numero tres. Greg, this is one that not enough people talk about. So risk number 3, everybody, state attorneys general. I just learned, by the way, you're supposed to say attorneys general, not attorney generals, which makes no sense. Greg, what's going on there? So no one talks about this.
I think it's two things. Not every state is governed by the attorney generals for consumer protection, but every state has a consumer protection laws that are out there. So you have the FTC and the FTC Act, which is a False and Deceptive Trade Practices Act. But every state has an individual False and Deceptive Trade Practices Act at a state level. So they have consumer protection laws that pertain to the residents and citizens of their states. They apply in two ways. One, if you're selling into that state, then you have to abide by those rules, just like we talked earlier about the CCPA in California. Number two is if you're in the state, you need to make sure you understand your regulatory, Deceptive Trade Practices Acts of that state in addition, because we live in a system, we have both state and federal laws. And the state laws, as long as they don't go below the threshold of the federal law, can be actually more strict in a lot of cases than the federal laws are. And there are 23 states in the United States that have business opportunity laws, or SAMP Acts, Seller Assisted Marketing Plan Acts. Those laws are way tougher than the federal Business Opportunity Act. So you have to be aware of that, because you could be out there doing business, you're not aware. I had this just recently where somebody was like, I'm not giving a 3-day right of rescission because I don't do live events, and the federal cooling period only applies to that. I said, well, but the state where you're located in has a 3-day right of rescission for telemarketing sales. And this is a telemarketing sale, and you're not giving it. So you have to be aware of both the federal and the state regulatory laws that pertain to you, because if you don't, just like we've talked before, the FTC may be the 5,000-pound gorilla. The state AGs could be the 1,000-pound gorilla. They both still rip off your arms and beat you to death with them. Like, you've got to know what's going on, right?
So Greg, if I'm in Maryland, and I know you've said before, Utah is a strict state. I mean, that's where you are. And they have really, really strict business opportunity. As a matter of fact, I know of someone who lives in New Mexico and got notifications from Utah and basically said, hey, what you're doing is a business opportunity. Now, he's chosen to, I don't know if he's done anything about it. He should. But if I'm not in the state, can that state still have jurisdiction over me?
So the laws in most states are, if you, like in California, let's use California for example. You're in Maryland. If you sell into California and you don't have the proper disclosures about privacy and protections there, like it's required by the CCPA, or you don't follow the California Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which is you call a client at 7 a.m. instead of after 8 a.m. in the morning. So you violated their act. They'll come after you just as if you were in the state. So you got to concern yourself with that. And I litigated a major, my first part of my career, I represented a Utah company in 23 different states across the United States. They weren't in those states. They were doing business in those states. They weren't principally located. They weren't registered in those states, but they had to litigate in those states. And it's not a fun experience. It's
So everyone, here's the deal. Greg and his firm have actually done a research on all 50 states. So it sounds overwhelming, and it really is overwhelming for you to be in compliance with all the states and to know all the things to do yourself. But they've done that. And so there's actually a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of simple things you can do to create those protective measures. Again, it sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot to move that needle of risk reduction, which is why I keep saying, book the call, talk to us. We've simplified and done all the hard work already. If you do it yourself, you're going to do it wrong, and it's going to take you months, if not years. It's just not going to be right. Okay.
I mean, all right. We got to give a 3-day right of rescission when most of the clients we talk to have a 30-day money back guarantee. It's it's like so easy, and then it eliminates all that risk. So
And again, as opposed to what most people think, Greg, we're not asking you to completely rip apart your copy. Not for this rule, all right? There are certain levels of protection you can add that are simple. They're just adding a sentence or two or changing something on your site, which then eliminates that entire protection. Speaking of that, it leads us into numero cuatro, number 4 risk factor, which I'll be honest with you, Greg, I never ever cared about. I never thought I was at risk for it, except it just happened to someone very, very close by, someone I know very well, and now it's opened my eyes to that. And number 4 is class action lawsuits. So to use Greg's analogy, let's say the FTC is the 5,000-pound gorilla. Let's say the state AG is a 3,000-pound gorilla. I still think a class action is a 1,000-pound gorilla, because those can get pretty serious too, because they're well-funded, usually backed by large firms. So what's a class action lawsuit? And is a business at risk regardless of their size, even if they're small?
So if for those of you who aren't aware of what a class action lawsuit, or if you haven't watched Aaron Brockovich or one of those movies, it's basically the idea that you get a group of people that individually one person doesn't have the funds or resources to go after a large company. And so they get together as a class to go after a specific harm that company has perpetrated. Now, sometimes, unfortunately for this industry, I've seen a lot of what we call professional plaintiffs. What I mean by that is there are people that have relationships with law firms. They go online, they look to see if your terms and conditions, or your 3-day rights or whatever, simple things are in line with what the law is. And if they see that it's not, then they go and they file a class action suit against you, representing all of the consumers you would have harmed for that. I represented a case a few years ago that had to do with the telephone consumer protection rule in California. And in that, you have to disclose if the call is being recorded. And my client, thank goodness, of the 3 defendants, 3 parties being sued, did have that. The other 2 parties didn't. And they had insurance, but that insurance paid millions of dollars for that settlement. We walked away without paying anything because my clients had competent counsel that gave them good advice, and they were able to stay away from that. So class action suits they can look little because it could be just looks like one person, but if they get certified by a court, they can open up here's the really important thing, that settlements in class action cases are public. They have to go through the court, which means they become public record. Then everybody gets to see that. So if the lawsuit for the underlying class is about some regulatory issue, even though it's brought by a private group of citizens, the FTC and the state AGs, they watch all of that. And if they get a judgment through a settlement that's a public settlement, and they see that you've agreed to the violations based upon a regulatory issue, they're going to follow that up with a regulatory action.
Yeah. So first of all, guys, I thought you had to be a publicly traded company to even have a class action done against you. That bubble burst just a few months ago when I learned you don't. And when I also learned that most law firms, big law firms, will fund these all the way. They take a percentage of. I did see the Aaron Brockovich movie where I learned, it can be very profitable for a law firm to take on a class action. So some of this stuff the last few months has opened my eyes. The part that I'll just say is, there are people actually out there hunting for this, and there is very simple things you can do in your terms and in your business to fully protect you from a class action lawsuit, like completely. And again, we're not asking you to make massive changes, but that risk just comes right on down. And so you should really take this seriously. So again, let us help so that you get that one extra protective measure in place. Greg, we're making great time. So the next one, we're going to move into number 5. This is an interesting one because, Greg, I don't think I've heard your feedback on this one. Top 2 or 3 things that you look for when you're trying to protect your clients in their customer contracts. Number 5 is customer contracts. Go.
Well, I want to make sure their cancellation provisions are really spelled out, because if they don't have good, whatever you're supposed to do or steps to follow to cancel the contract, then it's open-ended. And so either one, the client thinks that they can cancel at any time, or you're saying all sales final when you're supposed to give a 3-day right, or 7-day or 10-day, depending on what state you're in, and you're not doing that. So cancellations are the first things that I look at on that. The second thing I look at is the arbitration and class action waiver provision. Now, why do I look at that? Well, one, I use it as a defense all the time to move cases out of court into arbitration because they're private. Now, there are some detriments of that because sometimes the businesses have to fund some of the litigation or the arbitration up front. So we can talk about that. But the class action waiver, that I always look and see if you've got that. Now, I know there are attorneys that are like, well, I can beat that. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has said that if you have a class action waiver in a contract, that a client waives their right to both jury trial and class action, then they can't bring that later on. So I always try to have that in. So those are just two big issues I have that. And then lastly, forum selection. What does that mean? I want to make sure that if I have to litigate a case, it's not in some jurisdiction somewhere else. It's in where I choose it to be. So if Onyx in Maryland, we're litigating in Maryland, we're not litigating in California. So three things again. Number one, I want to make sure that the cancellation, whatever clause about terminating the contract is very clear. Number two, and it follows law. Number two, I want to make sure there's a class action waiver and arbitration provision. And number three, I want to make sure that if we do have a litigation, it's in there. Now, a fourth bonus one I'll throw in, and this just came up on a case that the client had it in their contract. They had a non-disparagement provision in their contract saying, hey, clients come on here. If you don't like our service, you agree not to disparage us. That's in about a dozen FTC cases. They hate disparagement clauses. So if you have that in there, it's not a smart thing. You know what an easy fix is? Have a confidentiality provision, an NDA in there, making sure that if you give them information that they walk away from that. So I would just want to make sure that you have that provisions in there properly. So those are the fourth is a bonus one in there. So just make sure you got that all put into place.
So again, now we only covered a few of them, but guys, it was crazy because when I had Greg, I remember this, I don't know if you remember, it was like 2.5 years ago, I had Greg review the stuff we had, and it was like a 8-9 page contract. So I thought, surely we've covered everything. And within minutes, he came back and said, you don't have this, you don't have this. And they were easy fixes that, again, reduce that risk. So take it seriously. All right, what are we up to? Number 6 now. So let's go. First of all, I just want to make sure real quick. Guys, if you see me looking to the side, I have a timer. I'm trying to be real good about this. So number 6 is an interesting one. We all talk about it. Privacy policies. And what we do a lot, and by we, I'm referring to marketers. We go to other people's sites, we copy, and we paste. I mean, right now, I can go type in my company's name. I can take a sentence out of my Learn privacy policy, paste it into Google, and I will find hundreds of people who have copied and pasted our privacy policies. So most people think you just have to have it there, but turns out it's actually kind of important and serves a pretty serious purpose. So, Greg, privacy policies.
Well, if you look at the Google settlement just this last week with the FTC, what was that all about? I mean, that case is about Google was getting and acquiring through your Google searches. They were maintaining your history of searches and they were storing that. Now, why were they doing that? So that they could go to companies and say, hey, pay us money. We know this person is looking for this type of product and service. So they're using it for a commercial purpose. But you as the consumer, you were not aware that you would authorize Google because you didn't authorize Google to do that. And so it caused a huge issue. And it's not just with Google, but Facebook, Meta has got issues with that. X has got issues. Twitter has got issues with that. And so, privacy protection is huge with the FTC. You want to make sure that if you're collecting data, that you're using it for appropriate purposes. There's a law called COPA, which governs child advertisements, and there's a ton of errors and violations of that law and how companies collect child data in order to do it. That's why, all the apps got in trouble back in the day because they were allowing kids to go in and do inline purchases, and they were collecting the data about that and following it. So it's super easy. Having an updated privacy policy that sets forth the terms in which you'll protect client data, regardless of where that. California is not the only one that has a unique. There are other states that have very unique laws that you have to address if you're selling into those states. If you're out of the country and you're selling in the United States, you still have to abide by those. If you're in the United States and you're selling into the EU, you've got the GDPR. You got to make sure you follow those rules as well, because if you collect client data and you host it on servers in the United States, you're in violation of EU laws and you could get sanctioned for that. I think Facebook had a huge lawsuit over in Europe over that they settled. It was millions of dollars. And it's all about privacy. It's easy. It's so simple to have that stuff updated. It's just laziness not to have it. So those are the type of privacy issues that I look at.
And the worst thing, guys, you can do right now, I've seen this. I saw another lawyer talking about this on Twitter. People think they can just go to ChatGPT or these AI tools and say, write me a privacy policy. And he pulled one from ChatGPT and he posted. And I looked at it and I was like, well, sounds like legal mumbo jumbo. Like, sounds good. And he pinned the first or the second line. He was like, here's an issue. You can't say this. This literally makes the rest of the privacy policy null and void per the new law that was passed and blah, blah, blah. And it's like ChatGPT just hallucinated and didn't know that. So there are certain simple things you need to do. I highly, highly advise getting the right attorney and not your family attorney down the hall from you and down the road from you, like a proper attorney that does this stuff. Go ahead, Greg.
I just had this just last week. I looked at a privacy statement, and the company is out of Florida, and they have a law firm in Tennessee that they're using. They're like, well, we know that these guys say they know this stuff. I'm like, they don't know this stuff. And you may look at our privacy policies that I put together and you're like, doesn't seem anything special. But I spend a lot of time researching and making sure they're up to date with when there's changes in the law. And a lot of firms are just they're not in the information space. They're not online marketers. They're not advertisers. They're not affiliates. They're not doing what you're doing. They're out there they're mom and pop. Their clients are convenience store owners, and they're just like, oh, and for them, it's probably okay. But for you, where there's additional scrutiny, it's not okay. You have to have specialized content in your privacy and your terms of service on your website.
No, you're 100% right. So, guys, another one of the ones that you can drop the risk. So you see why we're doing this and why I really wanted to do this, because we focus on some of the harder things. There are so many things that can get you in trouble that within a matter of hours or minutes you can fix. And that's one less thing you have to worry about going to bed as a business owner, because we have plenty to worry about as it is. All right. So, Greg, number 7 is ROSCA. It has a cool name. I will say, of all the different policy names, that's the one I like saying. It rolls off my tongue. ROSCA. Sounds like, I swear, if I had a dog, I would name my dog ROSCA. Like, that's a nice name.
We could have ROSCA and TCPA and TCPA. We could use all.
Yeah. So this one I've seen people go down for. I mean, a month before my case settled, or like before that, a friend of mine, a really good guy, thought it was a great company. I mean, I've seen some of their stuff, but they went down for, I in the end ended up having most of my issues because of Telesales. They had something called ROSCA. So, Greg, ROSCA.
Yeah, so ROSCA is an acronym. It stands for Restore Online Sellers Confidence Act. I mean, talk about a mouthful of words. So that's why everybody calls it ROSCA, because nobody wants to say the whole thing. When I first started my practice, one of the first cases I had was I didn't represent fully on that. I was brought in to counsel on, and the case was FTC versus Google Treasure Trust. What they were offering was what they call a negative option. And so ROSCA covers subscriptions. That's what it handles, which is basically going on and having the free trials or 30 days free before you get started, charging. So back in the day, even a long time ago, ROSCA came into when the internet first started coming out, and you'd have all these things like Shave of the Month Club or the Tie of the Month Club, and they would just send out the ties and they say, if you keep these, then after 30 days, we're going to start charging you. When I was a kid, it was Columbia House and CDs, and if before my time it was records and tapes, but those type of are negative options. So the concept is somebody comes on to sign up for your free trial, whether it's 10 days, 30 days, 40 days, a year, whatever it is, that after that period is over, that you start charging them a set fee for that. And so, hey, the issue with ROSCA is that if you're going to charge them, the amount and terms of the subscription have to be clearly and conspicuously disclosed to the client at the time they're signing up for the subscription. So what that means is I have to be able to check a box and see that I'm agreeing that after the 30-day trial period, that I'm going to be paying $19.95 or $35.95 or whatever the price is for the monthly or quarterly or annual subscription. And if I don't know that, if it's not clear to me at the time of checkout, then I violated ROSCA. That allows the consumer to come back and do a couple things. One, they can ask for their money back because they didn't know they were being charged. Two, it allows them to have a private cause of action where they could bring a class action against you. Or three, it allows the regulatory bodies, whether the FTC or California or Florida or New York, that have kind of what we call mini ROSCAs, to go in and bring a state or federal regulatory action against you. Like the case you mentioned, on it, which was just a few months before yours. They had opt-ins that weren't clear and conspicuous. They couldn't see them. They didn't know they were signing up for. And so that's why they settled in that case. And thank goodness your case wasn't on that. But I've seen several cases that have dealt with violations of ROSCA.
Yeah, so everyone, this is again another one of those where you can fix this, pretty simple to fix, man. You got, but how many, I have myself, Greg, just in the last couple months, probably seen 10 where, I go to look at the dollar trial or the free trial. Some of those, by the way, I'm never going to call a name out, but some of those from very big names, from names that I'm like, really? This would take your team about 15 minutes to fix. And it would completely remove an entire act, okay? Right now, the FTC mostly goes after two different things. ROSCA, and then the next one we're going to talk about, which is risk factor number 8, which is your telesales. So you can remove half of the things that the FTC is really concerned about and investigating people on within a matter of minutes. And it's like, it's crazy not to do it, guys. So ROSCA, if you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, I literally know people that have paid 7-figure fines due to it. So you want to eliminate that risk, you got to pay attention to this. Again, I want to encourage you to book the call with us, naoac.com/audit. Let's go through these, and there is an entire package that we've put together where we can actually come in and do all of this for you, and you're not paying hourly, and you're not going to get gouged and all of that. All right? Let's move to number...
on ROSCA before I move on this, Onyx.
Yeah.
Just less than 10 seconds. Two things. You think your conversions are going to be higher, but if you're doing ROSCA incorrectly, your complaints are higher, your chargebacks are higher, your refunds are higher, because people don't know they're opting into something, and it creates a huge issue. And you're spending more time and resources to deal with those complaints than if you just disclosed it. You'd still get good conversions, and then you're not dealing with all the poo and all the chargeback issues and all the other stuff that you're dealing with. So it's just a better process to do it.
We didn't even talk about that, guys. A chargeback issue to a business that's doing any form of volume, I would deal with anything before I deal with chargeback issues. You could lose your ability to process payments for the rest of your life. And that is not cool.
Yeah. Why? To save somebody that they didn't know you're going to refund anyway, or they're going to win the chargeback? No, just disclose it. It's so much better.
Yeah. All right. Number 8. A personal one for me, and one I think that you and I could talk about for days, hours, or whatever, but we'll do it in 3 minutes. Good old telesales compliance. This is a big focus of the FTC right now. We specifically mentioned that even the FCC gets a focus on this and likes it. And in some cases, even state AGs really like it. So phone sales, Greg, if I come to you, brand new client, you don't know me from the next guy, and I say I do phone sales, what are the first 3 things that you're going to look into or ask about?
Well, I'm concerned about telesales the most because of the AMG capital management case. When the FTC, through the Supreme Court ruling in that case, lost their ability to get asset freezes under Section 13B of the FTC Act, they had to focus on Section 19. So 13B, don't get confused with the numbers. 13B was just a section of the FTC Act, was kind of like an umbrella policy. It was like it covered every type of marketing practices. And when the Supreme Court said, no, you can't get asset freezes or disgorge profits based upon that, the FTC started focusing on Section 19, which is a specific clause. It's not over broad, it's very specific. And under that, the courts have ruled that allows them to have the authority to get refunds and how to get everything else on from clients. So with that, we focus on 19, which is telemarketing. So telemarketing under the telemarketing sales rule, which is governed by Section 19 of the FTC Act, the biggest issues on that is making sure that if we go back to the first thing we said, was the FTC look at false and unsubstantiated claims. They're going to look at that, false urgency. So, but in the context of telemarketing, they can now go in and take all of your assets, both private, meaning your personal assets and your business assets. And then they say, okay, go ahead and litigate this. Well, you can't. You don't have any resources. You're borrowing money from friends and neighbors to try to litigate something that you can't do. So it puts you in a terrible position. So when I hear a client that says, I do telesales, the first thing I say is, you're engaging in the most scrutinized part of any marketing, and it has the most authority from the FTC to go out and to disgorge and freeze assets. So you have to understand the risks. Now, I love telemarketing in the sense because I think it's crafty, it's nice, but it has to be done right. When you have an agent that can do 100 calls a day, it's hard to monitor those 100 calls a day. And if you're not on top of it, and they're saying what they want, you may not know what they're saying. And if you're not monitoring what they're saying, do you know who gets in trouble? You get in trouble. You know whose assets get frozen? Your assets get frozen. Guess what happens to that telemarketer? They go find a new job. They just go work for somebody else. So that's what they look at. Okay.
Sorry, Craig. I have to rip on you here because when he said, I love telemarketing, I burst out laughing at me. Says the lawyer that protects against them. I'm like, yeah.
I don't like telemarketers calling me. I'll admit that. I don't love that. But
you're like, I love other people doing telemarketing so that I can defend them when they get in trouble for doing it.
Listen, I'd be out of business here. No, I wouldn't.
So I stopped the timer because I want to go on a tangent. I'm just curious to hear your perspective on this. I've never asked you this question out of fear of, like, you don't say Beetlejuice 3 times. But they can freeze assets. Why didn't they with me? Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, for sure. I know why on you. Your case would be very difficult to get a full asset freeze. And you know this, and I don't want to get into too much details or granular about your case, but your telesales was just like a sliver of your total.
It was a sliver. Yeah.
So if it had been predominantly the reason, they could have looked at you, but also I think your claims, even though we found some things that the FTC didn't like, I think your case would have been a harder case to be brought and ask a judge what they call ex parte, which is by themselves, to say, hey, we think this is a really bad actor. We should get an asset freeze. If you look at the cases where they've got the asset freeze, what have they done? Look at the Automators LLC case. 80% of their regular customer service calls were complaints. You got all these people that are making very aggressive earnings claims saying you're going to make $600,000 to $60,000 a month doing an automated store. Nobody was making money. There was a ton of complaints. They internally knew there were problems. That's a perfect storm for an asset freeze, right? Yeah. You didn't have that. You had no consumer complaints, low BBB complaints, no real chargebacks. So the angst among the others, it wouldn't have been, they would have stood in front of a judge and be like, oh, we need this. And they're like, well, where's the outcry? Where's the rage? And well, we've got one BBB complaint. And so that would.
Okay.
Right.
So that's a good thing to highlight for everybody, not to minimize your telesales risk, because I take it from a guy who got hammered for it and mine wasn't even that bad. I mean, great, I get it now. Goal setting is against the rules, but like, we weren't outlandishly doing ridiculous things on the phone, which helped. And I should say that there are these grades, right? Because I felt like when I first got started with the FTC and we were going through the case and I would talk to the attorneys, I kind of used to get upset because I was like, why isn't there any grade? This is ridiculous. Like, you can't treat everybody the same. And actually, I don't believe they did now, to be very frank with you. When I sit back and the further I get from the case and I'm able to look at it a little bit without all the emotion, hey, look, I'm still in the space. I'm not banned from any spaces. My settlement negotiation was longest on the number, not on the terms. And when you look at what they said about other people they settled in the press releases versus what they said about me, I mean, sure, they weren't nice to me, but they weren't as mean as they can be. So I just want everyone to know that, again, when we talk about that 100%, we talk about minimizing it, those things, they do get recognized. And your telesales calls, I'm not going to make it sound like it's easy to get those to be compliant. It's not easy, but the rules are not that hard to follow. Now, the big part is Greg mentioned, how do you listen to 100 different sales reps? Well, that's where our app comes in. So we actually have a tool that'll be out here soon. Actually, just posted today for a new developer to help come in, increase the number of, like, I want to increase the speed at which we're integrating with all the different call cloud systems. So we've actually built something that'll give you the ability to numerically watch over, quantitatively watch over all the sales calls that are happening from all your reps, whether they lead to a sale or not, all in one system. So little pitch there for something cool that's coming down the pipeline. All right, we are moving to number 9. Greg, this is an interesting one that we've never spoken about, but I know this is important. Vendor and affiliate contracts. So if I come to you today, what are you looking for in those that are open legal problems?
Depends on the position on the affiliate, right? Whether I'm representing the affiliate or I'm representing the company that is using affiliates. So let me give you the perspective from both sides. First off, if I'm representing a company that uses mass affiliates, affiliates get companies in trouble all the time because they're kind of like the telemarketer that can leave and go and work somewhere else. It's very rare. I mean, it happens that the FTC will sue the affiliate. I mean, I can list cases where they have. So you got to be careful on both sides. But more often than not, it's the company that gets sued because of the representation the affiliate's made. So I always make sure that I have it clear in my affiliate agreements that the affiliate takes responsibility for the advertising, ad copy, whatever they're out there. And if they violate it, they'll indemnify the company for the violations. Now, you can't just put that in the terms and not have any, oversight. You have to have some oversight. So I always tell my clients, have them submit the initial advertisements, make sure that they're compliant, make sure that they know that it's their responsibility to maintain compliance and hire their own attorneys to do that. But if it comes to your attention that the affiliate of yours is using something that's way not compliant, like I looked at one last week where it was like the affiliate posted something that, hey, do this and make $180,000 in 3 months. The main company wasn't saying anything like that. The affiliate offer page that was leading into the VSL that the company produced was saying that. And they became aware of that. And I said, well, you got to address it with the affiliate. And if the affiliate keeps on doing it, you're responsible because should have known that what they were doing was wrong and you didn't do anything about it. So if you become aware of it, you've got to take action. Now, if I'm the affiliate, I want to make sure that if I am advertising for a company and they have me sign a contract that has that I am being compliant, that I'm going and hiring an attorney, not just guessing what compliance is, which is the big possibly do, but I'm hiring a company to go through and to review the ad copy to make sure it's good because, I'm going to more likely than not, the FTC is going to sue the company, but what's that company going to do if they get sued? They're going to say it was this affiliate. Because if you've got them in trouble, why would they protect you? They're not going to protect you. They're going to say, FTC, here they are on a silver platter, go after them too. And that's in certain recent cases, that's what the FTC has done.
Well, we just released a podcast episode recently, right? With one of your clients who was an affiliate and got in trouble for being an affiliate of a company. I think if you're an affiliate doing volume, you are opening yourself up for sure. Or in our case, in Learn's case, two other people that got named in our case were not affiliates, they were experts. Right. And the FTC's perspective was, hey, you guys were still participating in it and you could have stopped it and you didn't. So, so what about like vendors, agencies, copywriters, someone who's just doing a gig for me, they're freelancers? Is there anything in specific you're worried about in those contracts?
Same thing. You got to make sure that any ad copy so if I have an ad copy that a copywriter that's as a contractor for a company, I make sure that they understand that they have to provide. I tell my client, because they're rogue, they're independent contractors, they don't care. You should probably review that content before it's posted on there. And if it's not good content, then you push it back to them and say, this isn't compliant. And we're not going to pay for that if it's not compliant. Because if you allow them just to go post things, and that could be anything. It could be networks. It could be advertising agencies. It could be anything. The way the FTC looks at things is they'll go through the entire funnel, every single party that touches the advertisement that faces the consumer. And every step of the way, anybody who touches that could be liable for that. So if I have a third-party affiliate that I'm working with that's not an affiliate, but they're providing some content, a content provider or an ad copywriter, or a VSL manager, whatever it is, an advertising agency, and they're connecting. And I know that they don't just represent me, but they represent a slew of other companies that are really non-compliant.
Mm.
Why do I want to step in there? Because we talked about this when we had the podcast. When they issue the CID, what do they ask about? Who are you doing business with? Who are
Yeah.
all the companies? Well, if they hit that advertising agency and they do a civil investigative demand, a subpoena, or a lawsuit, they're going to ask the same stuff. And if your name's attached to an agency that's representing Jane Doe, Jane D, Jane whatever, and they're out there and they're saying whatever they want, and they're not compliant, then you're just gambling. You're playing, Russian roulette that, hey, that if the advertiser gets hit or the agency gets hit, they're not coming after me. The first thing they're going to ask for is all the clients that they're advertising for.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a common thing that I hear. And so if you're an agency, you are absolutely still at risk, especially if you're doing it at volume. So interesting. All right, so there's indemnifications. Again, boop, ability to reduce risk by just making changes to contracts.
It's things that look good too. And you can't just have the indemnification. You have to have the other things too, because the FTC will call that window dressing or lipstick. Like it looks nice, but it doesn't do anything. The indemnifications help in addition to monitoring and being proactive. You don't want to, the one thing that marketers and companies don't want to do is take total responsibility for the ad copy that the affiliate or the third party vendor or the advertising agency is doing, but they can't turn a blind eye to it either. So that's why I'm saying, look at the upfront stuff. If it comes to your attention, you absolutely have to jump on it, especially if you get a customer complaint that comes in and you can track it to the affiliate or the advertising agency or the network. You've got to address that. You can't just leave that.
Got it. All right. And then last but not least, one of my favorites. Again, guys, if you're sitting there thinking, gosh, am I covered in this area? Am I not? Well, book a call. Or go find an attorney you like that you think can do it. But please work on these because, again, boom, boom, boom. Just keep this visual in mind, which is like our job is to reduce your risk. Last but not least, Greg, this one got me in a lot of trouble, not per se with the regulators, but just, oh my God, it was stupid expensive, pain in my ass, made the whole case go for probably a year longer than it needed to, which is the document retention policy. And I have yet to meet a single company or marketer in the last 1 year that I've asked this question. I have not met one. I'm talking about, Greg, I'm even talking about companies that they're fully aware of the FTC, they're bigger operations, and they don't have a document retention policy. And not having one, just so you guys know, means I ended up having to turn over 700,000 documents. I made the job of the regulators actually much easier and wholesome and more complete. But the worst part of it is that entire time that I was retaining and keeping all those documents, I opened myself up to massive privacy problems, potential getting hacked. I spent, I don't know how many tens of thousands on storage fees. So what's a document retention policy, and how does it not only help a company, but help them reduce their legal risk?
So I just had a text this morning from a client that went to dinner with somebody who has just settled with the FTC in the last year. And in that, they were like, we've got to make sure that we're not keeping our sales recording calls for more than 30 days. They were all over it. And that was a big thing with their case. And I said, well, I agree. And that's why we have the document retention policy in place. So if you get sued in any litigation, whether it's a regulatory action or it's some private person or class action that sues you, AG's office, whatever, if you go in and you start to delete things, that's a big no-no. It's called exfoliation. What it basically means is that if the other side, the party bringing the action, finds out about it, they'll go to the court and they'll say, court, this is such a bad faith act by the defendants that people are suing that you should allow us to get judgment against them, that all of our allegations are true because they've destroyed the evidence. And the court will grant that. And so it's a really bad thing to do. So I'll get clients all the time be like, hey, I just got a lawsuit. Just got served. Can I just start getting rid of stuff? And I'm like, no, because when you get sued by the FTC, for example, you get a letter that comes in with an investigation on it. Got it. All my clients get it. It's basically, it says you need to retain all of your records from this point forward. and you can't destroy them, and you should not destroy them. Now, does that mean beforehand that you couldn't have legitimate reasons without a lawsuit pending to get rid of things and just clean house periodically? Absolutely, you can. We call that a document retention policy. It's just going through, and is there a legitimate reason for it? Yes, there is. Think of all the emails and telephone calls and whatever you have that have financial information from your consumers. Well, you could be at risk if somebody hacks your system, gets into that, and they take that data. If you're in the health space, think about all the personal or not financial data, but all the health data that you might have that could be applicable to HIPAA. You're just going to keep on to that. And if you get hacked, it's available. Why wouldn't you have a simple document in place that outlines the procedures to handle certain type of documents, emails, telephone calls, hard copy for ads and copywriting materials and landing pages and VSLs and webinars? Have something in place that just says periodically, we're just going to clean this out so that we don't have legacy data that opens us up to exposure. It's not just to outside third-party externals. I was dealing with a client or text last night at like 11 o'clock my time because they had an employee that went in and started stealing client credit card data and using it to buy, products and services for that. And that where's the liability? Again, with the company. So how do we implement a document retention policy? Real easy. We have two documents. If you have employees, you have them sign an employment agreement that includes that document retention policy. If you have contractors, you have them sign an independent contractor agreement that has that document retention policy. And that's how it gets disseminated. And then you have to put protocols with IT and everything else to make sure that you're following those. If you have the document retention policy, but you don't follow it, it's just like not having one.
Yeah. So again, this is something, guys, that I'm going to preach heavily because it's not even, I'm not saying do it because you need to hide shit. I want to be very clear about this. This is not a solution to you doing bad crap, because even if you're doing bad crap, it doesn't hide it at all. You're still going to have a 30 to 60 day record of it, and that's enough. That's all they need. So this isn't that. This is just about keeping house clean, simplifying life. For us, the document turnover, the thing was this, okay? If the documents exist, when you get a regulator at your door, if they exist and are easy to reach, it's your job to turn them over, right? So if they're accessible without overburdensome dues and all of that, and if you reach out to them and say, okay, guys, you've asked for all 16,000 of our calls, we can get them for you, but it's going to take us a month to figure it out, dig it out, we got to call the company, What do you think they're going to say? They're not in a rush. They're not in a rush. They're going to say, okay, no problem. So on my side, it took the document turnover, the discovery as they call it, took 5 of my top 10 people, 5 of my top people, maybe 6, at times 7. It took a lot of legal costs because everything has to go through a scanner with your lawyers, right? So they don't look at every single document, although some companies would have that, and that would have just cost me an arm and a leg. Yeah,
I do.
So there you go.
Yeah, I read them all.
Right? So you're going to spend a lot with your attorney, which is what it is. And so, and then I realized later, I'm like, holy crap, we had so many calls and so many conversations and things where all this private information's there. And what if that got hacked? Well, I would be dealing with personal lawsuits, class action lawsuits, federal lawsuits. Like, I don't even want to deal with this. So now, if you go out and get an attorney and you try to properly put a document retention policy in place, you're going to spend thousands of dollars because they're going to create one. They're going to go through all this. You know what? Talk to us. We've got it. Yeah, they're going to, well, that's the bigger thing. They're going to miss something, cost you.
Yep.
So we've got this handled. And again, we can do this as part of the entire consult. So if you are interested, book a call, naoac.com/audit. We're going to wrap this up now because this episode's gone a little bit longer than I wanted, but it was really good, really thorough. And I think this is going to be the basis of one of our next books, Greg, that is just real quick, drink through the fire hose. But if you're a COO or CFO at a company, man, you need to know this, and it's not hard to protect from. I would say 60 to 70% of what we talked about, Greg, today, someone could within 30 days, it could be done and protected against that. So it's silly if they're not doing it. So guys, make it happen. Greg, final words, go for it.
Yeah, I just think that oftentimes that you can't be an ostrich. You can't stick your head in the sand on these things. And just ignorance is not a good defense. Maybe you've run your business or you're getting into marketing for the first time, or you think you're unstoppable or untouchable because you're an agency or, You're like, it doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want. Well, that works until you get that FedEx package or you get that lawsuit served on your door. Why? These things are easy, man. It's just knowledge. Like you teach your clients, you're in the knowledge space where you're teaching people like, hey, you don't know how to do business well. We're teaching you simple things in your business that if you apply, they can help protect you against legal consequences and save you tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars by putting some simple things into place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, everyone, there you go. So book the call, get yourself buttoned up. Thanks for listening today. And just wanted to make sure that you understand that these are real things and that you may or may not know anyone that's facing them. But the more I'm realizing now, looking around, I got more and more of my friends going through one or the other. And so it's becoming real. And especially as you scale, it's better to button down now because the bigger you get, the higher the risk. So with that said, everyone, make it happen. And of course, remember, don't say that. Grab your copy of the book, don'tsaysthat.com. And of course, naoac.com/audit to book a call to talk about getting your stuff lined up. Greg, thanks again for doing this while you're on spring break. See you guys. Bye.